One royal chronicle says he hanged himself. Another says he was given poison. A third says a servant strangled him with a bowstring through a window. This is a king, and Korea's own official records can't agree on how he died. But before we get to that night, you need to know what happened to get him there. England had Richard III. Korea had Grand Prince Suyang. Same century, same crime. An uncle who stole a throne from his boy-king nephew and silenced everyone who objected, with blood. But England's version ended with two boys simply disappearing into the Tower of London, never to be seen again. Korea's version? Korea kept three separate royal chronicles, and they tell three completely different stories about what happened on the night of the 24th day of the 10th month, 1457. His name was King Danjong. He was the most legitimate ruler in 500 years of Joseon history. 3 consecutive firstborn successions, an unbroken royal bloodline. He was 12 years old when he took the throne, and every single person who could have protected him was already dead. This is the story of how that happened, and the mystery that still hasn't been solved. So here's the thing about Danjong. This kid had the single most bulletproof claim to the throne in 500 years of Joseon history. And it wasn't even close. His grandfather was Sejong, the greatest king Korea ever produced. Sejong's firstborn son, Munjong, inherited the throne, and Munjong's firstborn son was Danjong. 3 consecutive firstborn successions. That had never happened before in Joseon. Ever. By every rule of the game, this was his throne to keep. But the universe had other plans. His mother, Queen Hyondok, died the day after giving birth to him. One day. She was 24 years old. Danjong never saw her smile, never heard her voice. She held him once, and then she was gone. His grandmother, Queen Joseon, died when he was 5. The one woman in the palace who could have raised him, who could have shielded him from what was coming, gone. And then his father, King Munjong, the man who was supposed to raise him, protect him, guide him through the politics of the most dangerous court in East Asia, lasted barely 2 years on the throne, died somewhere between 37 and 39. Joseon's own records can't even agree on his age. 2 years. That's all Danjong got with his father as king. So, in 1452, a 12-year-old boy sat down on the throne of Joseon. No mother, no grandmother, no father. The most legitimate king in the dynasty's history, and the most alone. Now, meanwhile in England, almost the exact same thing was about to happen. A 13-year-old named Edward V had just inherited the English throne. His uncle, Richard III, was about to lock him in the Tower of London and take the crown for himself. Same century, same setup. An uncle, a boy king, and a throne that was about to be stolen. But Danjong didn't know any of that. All he knew was that the adults around him kept dying. And there was one adult who was very much alive, very smart, very ambitious, and very, very patient. His name was Grand Prince Suyang, Sejong's second son, Danjong's uncle, and he had been watching the game very closely. But here's the thing about Suyang. While everyone in the palace was mourning King Munjong, Suyang was already making moves. So who exactly was Grand Prince Suyang? Second son of Sejong, not the firstborn, not the heir, never supposed to sit on that throne. But here's what you need to understand. Suyang was not the kind of man who accepted what he was supposed to be. He was brilliant, he was lucerless, and while the entire court was focused on protecting a 12-year-old king, Suyang was building a network. A full year before the coup, Suyang pulled a move so clever most people didn't even notice. He volunteered for a diplomatic mission to China, specifically to get the Ming Emperor's approval for the boy king's succession. Sounds royal, right? Sounds like a devoted uncle looking out for his nephew. Except that trip gave Suyang a private audience with the Chinese emperor, international credibility, and a reputation inside the court as the man who gets things done. Nobody suspected all thing. And then came the night of October 10th, 1453. The night that changed everything. Here's what Suyang did. He didn't send soldiers. He didn't launch an army. He walked, personally, to the house of Kim Jong-seo, the most powerful minister in the country. The man King Moonjong had personally asked to protect his son. The last real world between Danjong and Digester. Suyang showed up at his door with a letter. Kim Jong-seo opened it, started reading, and while his eyes were still on the paper, Suyang killed him. Right there, in his own house. Kim Jong-seo did not work out of that room. Suyang did. And then they moved through the city, minister by minister. Hwangbo-in, the Prime Minister. Jongbun. Every senior official who had sworn to protect the boy king. Every man King Moonjong had trusted with his son's life. Gone. All of them. In a single night. The 1453 coup was over before sunrise. The next morning, Suyang appointed himself Prime Minister. Just like that. The 12-year-old king was technically still on the throne. But Suyang had the knives. He had the ministers. He had the power. Now here's where you need to zoom out for a second. Richard III of England did almost the exact same thing, 30 years later. He had his supporters arrest the senior ministers protecting young Edward V, then had himself declared Lord Protector. Different continent, different language, same playbook. But here's what made Suyang truly terrifying. He didn't take the crown. Not yet. He let the 12-year-old keep the title of king for 2 more years. Why? Because China had just approved the boy as king. Ripping that away immediately would cause an international incident. So Suyang waited. He just sat behind the throne, patient, methodical, terrifying, running the entire country while a child wore the crown. The boy signed what Suyang told him to sign, said what Suyang told him to say. A king in name, a puppet in practice. And here's what happened next. People tried to fight back, and the ones who did paid the price in blood. So here's where things stand. Suyang has the knives, he has the ministers, he has the power. And Danjong, still technically the king, is just sitting on the throne, watching. In Chonsabegojibonyon, Suyang decided he was done pretending. He forced the teenage Danjong to officially hand over the crown. The official record says Danjong willingly abdicated in favor of his uncle. He did not willingly do anything. He was a teenager, surrounded by the men who had murdered every person who ever protected him. He said the words because the alternative was not saying anything ever again. And here's where it gets insane. 6 scholars decided to fight back. These weren't random guys. These were the finest minds in the country, trained under King Sejong himself at the Royal Institute of Scholars. Seong Sam Moon, Bak Peng Nyon, Yi Ge, Ha Wei Ji, Yu Seong Won, Yuumbu, the 6 martyrs. Their plan? A royal banquet was being held for a Chinese envoy. Suyang would be right there, out in the open, surrounded by guests. The 6 martyrs were going to assassinate him in front of everyone, restore Danjong to the throne, end this nightmare in one night. It was bold, it was desperate, and it almost worked. But someone talked. One of the conspirators broke. Hours before the banquet, Suyang found out everything. And here's what happened next. 70 people directly involved, executed. Then Suyang kept going. 500 to 800 people connected to the plot, executed or enslaved. The wives and daughters of the conspirators were handed out as slaves to Suyang's supporters. Every single name associated with the resistance was erased from official records. That same year, Suyang dismantled the Royal Institute of Scholars, the institution Sejong had built to be the intellectual heart of Joseon. Gone. He literally tore down the one place where people could think independently, because independent thinkers had just tried to kill him. And Danjong? Now officially just the former king. A teenager, stripped of his title. Imagine being 17 and watching the people who tried to save you get executed, one by one, because they tried. That was his life now. But here's the thing, it gets worse, because someone in Danjong's own family made one last attempt. And it didn't just fail. It got an entire city wiped off the map. And here's what happened next. They sent the 17-year-old to a place with no way out. Chongyongpo, a tiny patch of land surrounded on 3 sides by the Seogang River, with sheer cliffs on the 4th side. You could only get in or out by boat. No walls needed. Nature had already built the perfect prison. On June 22, 1457, Danjong, now demoted to Prince No-san, stripped of every royal title he was born with, left the palace and traveled for 7 days to reach this place. A boy who had once been the most legitimate king in Joseon history, now a prisoner with no name. He was 16 years old, but before he even arrived, one last rescue attempt. Grand Prince Suyang, Sejong's 6th son, Danjong's own uncle, was already in exile in a town called Sunhum. From his prison, he tried to organize a restoration. He found allies. He made a plan. It got reported. A servant talked. Suyang was executed. He was 32. And here's the part that should make your stomach drop. Suyang didn't just punish the conspirators, he abolished the entire city of Sunhum. Not the governor, not the officials, the city itself. Wiped off the map. An entire town erased because one man inside it had tried to save the rightful king. So now, Danjong is alone. Truly, completely alone. No allies left alive, no family willing to risk it, no one in the entire country who could even try to save him without getting their whole city deleted. At Chongyongpo, there was a pine tree. It's still there today. 600 years old, 30 meters tall. Visitors call it the guanium pine, the tree that heard Danjong's crying. It's a national monument now. Then a summer flood hit, and even the exile island wasn't safe anymore. They moved him to a small government building nearby called Gwanpungheon. 4 months total, June to October, 16 years old, sitting in a room at the edge of the world with a pine tree for company. And then, on the 24th day of the 10th month, 1457, he was dead. But here's the part that should bother you. Korea's official records can't agree on what happened that night. Remember the 3 records from the beginning? Here they are. The Sejong Silok, written under Suyang's own government, says Danjong hanged himself. Suicide. Case closed. The Sejong Silok, over a century later, quotes a scholar who said poison was sent to Yongwol, and the official order was still filed in the Justice Department. The Sejong Silok says the executioner couldn't do it, so a servant stepped forward, looped a bowstring around Danjong's neck through a window, and pulled. That servant immediately collapsed, coughing blood, and died on the spot. 3 chronicles, 3 stories. One dead 16-year-old king. Most historians agree it wasn't suicide. That account comes from the one government with every reason to lie. He was almost certainly murdered. But nobody can say exactly how. But one person showed up. Suyang ordered that anyone who touched the body would have 3 generations of their family executed. Nobody moved, except Eom Humdu, a local official. He buried the boy himself. His family scattered and hid for decades. 241 years later, King Sukjong finally restored Danjong's royal title. His tomb is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. England never did this for the princes in the tower. Korea did. And those 3 royal chronicles that can't agree on how he died, they're all still there. You can read them.
And you can decide which one you believe.
Next time, the uncle who stole the throne, but actually turned out to be one of Korea's greatest kings. Was he a villain or a hero? Subscribe to find out. If you want to go deeper, the film The King's Warden is exactly where this story goes next. And if you want more stories like this one, the kind Korea doesn't tell foreigners, subscribe. There are a lot more.